Hello, everyone. I'm really excited about today's session because this is the first time we're going to do a panel discussion, and that too of the interactive nature exclusively for the e-learning businesses. So I'm joined today by really esteemed guests, as you can see on the screen. Uh, since this is going to be an interactive panel discussion, so thanks again, everyone, for joining in. Before we actually start with the actual discussion part, I think it would be a good way. It will be a good start to know the functions, the business functions to which our attendees belong to. So I'll be shooting a poll right now, which you'll see in front of you on the screen. Just select the appropriate option. So you'll have 40 seconds to select your option. Perfect. So seems like a lot of people have joined in who belong to the UI and UX design business function. Well, it seems a really good number. A lot of people from the digital transformation business function have also joined in. Welcome, guys. The marketing function is not far behind. Says based on the data, 38%. The UI and UX design function leads by 38%. Marketing, digital analytics, and digital transformation business functions come second at 17%, followed by product management at 10%. Really great to see the numbers there. Perfect. So I think we can progress with the discussion. Deepak, if you can just switch on your camera.
Sure. Thanks, Vipul. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of its kind webinar specifically directed at the e-learning industry. So I'm going to start introducing our panelists for today. I'm going to start by introducing Jan Marks, who is the SVP Customer Success for Multiplica. Our next panelist is Brian D. Kemper. He's the head of university partnerships at Springboard, the company behind a lot of courses and a pioneer in online education at the moment. And I'd also like to introduce Giuseppe, who is the executive director for learning and innovation at IESC Business School, Spain. Welcome all. Thanks a lot, guys, for taking our time with this. Absolutely, it's a pleasure. So, let's kickstart this interesting discussion that we have aligned ourselves for. I'll start by picking up a very simple question. In the need of the hour, what we have seen is, COVID-19 has impacted the lifestyle of every industry. Have impacted people coming from different backgrounds as well, and every expert and every professional as well. I think it has changed the way now we do and learn things as well. So, my first question to the panel would be like, why e-learning and online courses are recording an upward trend? What would you have to say about that, Brian? Considering that you're in the thick of the things, and you're probably getting the most requests. Yep.
Yeah. I think the biggest reason, from my perspective, is probably not as much related to COVID as it is just access, convenience, just faster progression of how people are absorbing education and demands for education. So there's evolution in traditional higher education models. People are taking what used to be full-time programs online. There are different segments of education that are starting out online. And in a lot of cases, it's really what the consumers are driving. They're looking for something that fits a working lifestyle. The profile of incoming students is very broad. You have working professionals, you have people caring for families, you have 19-year-olds looking for their first steps in what could be the beginning of a career, and you have people that are in mid-career looking for maybe executive education. So it's a very broad swath, and I think to be able to serve such a large group, you have to have flexibility and an adaptive model. And online education for the last 10 to 15 years has been evolving to fit that in a lot of different ways.
Thanks. That's pretty enlightening. So I'll take your views now, Giuseppe.
Yeah, no, I would add to that. with the crisis, there's been a sort of forced experimentation with online everything, and it's not to be underestimated. I think the fact that many of us have been again forced to either conduct business online, to meet family online, and why not to also learn online. So this adoption curve that was due to be spread over many years of technology like this, has actually been compressed to just a few weeks and few months. And that's both on the supply and on the demand side. So on the supply side, schools like my own have been forced to convert. I call it kind of lift and shift. I would not quite say design, but convert face-to-face to online, and likewise, learners have been forced to change from what was a face-to-face experience and transfer to online. I would say this: I think that's good in the sense of awareness. That's good in the sense of exposure. I think we're still quite a ways off from actually being good from the point of view of learning, in the sense that we need to now move from this forced experimentation to actually a kind of digital first, intentional use of online in kind of the learning experience overall, as opposed to, again, this lift and shift which has happened in many contexts.
The great points there. Again, I like the word and terminology that you used about forced experimentation. Again, I think it's driven from the necessity. Coming to you, Jan, what are your thoughts on the question?
Well, I'm speaking from Spain, and there's another reason that hasn't been mentioned so far, a very unfortunate one. We are at the beginning of a deep economical crisis. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people will lose their jobs, young ones, and they are actually forced to replan their lives and go ahead and requalify and find a new career and jump into a different area. And the most attractive space is the digital area. So I see a lot of experimentation going on. I've actually, people that I know that knew that I'm looking deeply into the online learning area, they're actually asking me and said, what would you recommend? What can I do? What is it? What would you do in my position? So because a lot of qualified people are now using e-learning for a new beginning.
All right, that's again great points. I think forced experimentation, economic crisis, and something that people want new ways to learn, and they want to learn from anywhere and everywhere possible. I think these combined, all top 3 to 4 reasons, give us a good indication as to why the world is changing and where it is headed to. Another question that comes to my mind after that is, now when people have decided to sign up for a course and do things online, what expectations do people come with when they sign up for e-learning course? This time let's go with Giuseppe. I think you'd have some experience there, a lot, I guess.
Well, there's many ways to answer that. I think the first way is to think about the market, and I think there's, like in any industry, in any offer, different markets, right? And there's in the, let's say, greatest simplification, there's the sort of market for face-to-face experiences, and there's the market for online experiences. So I think the expectations of one or the other are very different. Meaning, if I am intentional in the sense that I would like to have a residential program, a residential experience, my expectation of online is one thing, as opposed to if I am a buyer of online, first and foremost, my expectation to online is radically different than the former clients. So I think to say that everybody has the same expectations of online is very different if you consider the point of view from which you're making that let's say, decision of engaging in a learning experience. That's number one. The other thing I would say, number two, is though, in general, the market is very ignorant still. I want to say the supply side is quite ignorant too, but let's not talk badly about them. I think the market is very ignorant still in the sense that, you know, we apply online as a label to everything that is virtual, and I think there's great degree of variation from, say, a MOOC, say, on the one end, which is a mass unfacilitated learning experience, all the way to, you know, maybe what Brian's organization is doing, or YISA is doing, which is a highly facilitated, you know, small cohort like of experience. And so, you know, both are online. They're happening both online, but that's just the context of learning. I mean, you know, the way of learning is radically different. And then there's everything in between. And what I think we're unfortunately doing, the suppliers of online, is not doing a good job of educating the market, you know, either through wacky kind of marketing campaigns or pricing policies or whatever else. We're trying to, you know, first downplay, or let's say, you know, position online as a second best to face-to-face, and secondly, confuse the market in terms of what's in this black box of what we're offering. And so I think there's quite a bit of road to travel still before, you know, the market becomes educated in terms of, you know, what is the type of online experience that I'm looking for? What are the interactions that it includes? And therefore, you know, what is my willingness to pay versus my expected impact, and so on and so forth.
Varied reasons, and I think you correctly pointed out about, you know, providing clear expectations. What are your thoughts on this, Brian?
My thoughts would be taking a page from the educating the market comment that Giuseppe made, and I think it really is the Wild West in a lot of ways. Students coming in, their expectations are really going to be aligned. Whether for Springboard, the expectations are all about how to help someone migrate their way through career change. So whether it's an accountant that now wants to become a data scientist, it's someone that has software engineering experience that now wants to get into and learn about machine learning engineering, it's going to be about the outcome. So not only how do you find the best kind of model and delivery system that works best for you, whether it's your style, your you know, your personal situation, your economic situation, whatever it is, it's how do you figure out ways to keep the eye on the prize. What is the outcome? What's the time to completion? What am I going to be able to do when I get through this? Those are all the things, really, regardless of any kind of program, face-to-face or something online, people have expectations of what they want to get from the credential, the degree, the experience. And those are the things that I think of right out of the gate. They want to be laser focused in a lot of cases on career alignment. How much time is going to be expected for them to be successful in the program? Well, one of the reasons that the unfacilitated MOOCs and this just big broad ocean of opportunity don't have a high degree of outcomes is because people aren't always there to make sure they know exactly what does it take to be successful. Do I need to spend 5 hours a week in this? Do I need to spend 10 hours a week? Do I need to meet with my mentor or my advisor to make sure that I can meet the goals of getting the right outcomes for me to drive that that value and that return on investment? So those are the things that I think of, and especially tacking it on to what Giuseppe mentioned as well.
Yeah, great points, to be honest there. Jan, what would you think?
Well, I'd like to advocate for the ones which are not present, the different e-learning companies that are not that much in deep career planning. There's a lot of other stuff going on. People want to learn a language, want to learn an instrument. So my answer to what are their expectations will be they're very, very different. So there's a lifelong learner that might use an offer from YISA and buys into one of their courses. Then there is a younger career planner who's actually planning for, it's a very important early stage decision in his life. And there is somebody who's just trying to correct his work-life balance, learning Chinese. So these are very different. What they all have in common, though, is that the stuff that you said, Brian, is that their expectation, there's a certain expectation regarding the requirements. So will I be able to follow what's being taught on this course? So very often we see that sometimes people sign up for something which they can't deal with, or vice versa, which they already knew. So they have a certain expectation with regards to the prerequisites of the course. But altogether, I think they want to have a clear understanding of what the parameters that you said. So time to complete, what are the formats, what will be my experience, and yeah, and they will be very different.
I think what you're trying to say is, no, not trying, you're actually saying that is, so the expectations, your expectations of an e-learner would depend upon where exactly he's coming from and where does he want to go. For example, a new kid on the block wanting to start a new career, maybe someone who's been midterm experience wants to switch careers, someone who has been truly experienced, like wants to know about the new technology and stuff like that. So the varied expectations, and I think that now would completely depend upon how we understand and gather insights. How do we monitor user behavior and gather insights for different people, and then probably turn that into, how do we come up with different kinds of experiments. So let's start with Jan first with you. Like, how do you suggest, as an owner of an e-learning website, how do we start capturing insights? Where should we start from?
Well, actually, obviously, read your data. Well, first of all, we have to, again, make the big difference between what is the different stages of the user journey. So we can monitor different things in different moments. So during the sign up phase, or let's say the purchase phase, when I'm dreaming about a course, or I'm starting to tap into it and comparing it and checking things and so on. So I have some expectations, and there actually the good old conversion rate is actually, whether it's lead gen or whether it's booking and enrollment. So that's a more known challenge. When it comes to the teaching learning experience in the middle of the user journey, which is the holy grail, which is actually where the whole value is. I think we have to face the extraordinary drop rates, and we have to find ways to reduce them. So there's a lot of e-learning happening. I mean, not if I have spent 3,000 or 30,000 euro on my education, I will certainly not drop off. But if I just purchased a course for photography or for getting better at Photoshop, then I have actually to find ways to reduce my my drop-off rates. I don't know, Giuseppe, in a master's program or an online bachelor or an online course of IESE, they would probably not drop off. And the only way to measure the success of my course will be probably some indicators for engagement, right? So interaction, participation, responses, proactiveness. I don't know. Actually, would be interesting to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that how can I say? I mean, dropping off can happen in the face-to-face world as well, right? I mean, 40% of students in Spanish universities never complete their degrees, and I think it's pretty much a consistent, in other parts of Europe as well. So, I mean, dropping off is not something that happens online all of a sudden. It's there's many reasons for people dropping off. First and foremost, the lack of relevance of what they're doing. So the motivation, right? But I do think, though, that what changes, face-to-face, online, or blended for that matter, if we want to talk about the three types of modalities, the opportunities, or let's say the ways needs are solved, right? So the idea of engagement in a face-to-face world, or the need for engagement in a face-to-face world, is solved in a certain way, right? We have I don't know, campuses versus conversations at the bar with faculty versus study groups outside of class, right? We have all of these things, all of these scripts, behavioral scripts that we've designed for a face-to-face experience. The question is, what are the behavioral scripts that we need for an online experience in order for that engagement to remain high? If the program is irrelevant, they're going to drop off face-to-face or online. But if we don't have the right behavioral scripts in online, we will obviously face a lowering of engagement due to the poor leveraging of those opportunities. And I will say this, online, just like anything, opens up opportunities to solve old needs in new ways, or sometimes to solve even unmet needs. So the simplest example is, the use of analytics in, let's say, a conversation with a student on performance, right? By virtue of using an online platform that is able to track let's say, create a digital footprint of the interactions an individual has, whether it's saying something during a class versus completing a series of tests versus reflection in a journal, right? This is a digital footprint. I can bring that very easily to bear in the conversation that I have with that student with respect to his or her progression through my course. So this is an opportunity to do something in a new way, to address a need in a new way, or maybe even an unmet need, because in the face-to-face world, doing so is very cumbersome. So again, I think it's about thinking through, like you said, the different steps of the journey, and saying, how can we solve old needs in new ways, or even solve unmet needs given the opportunities offered by online.
Great points again, Jessica. I think, Ryan, what we'd love to know from you is your perspective on, because Springboard does a lot of commercial courses which are very different than the university. So I think it'd be great to know your opinion on that.
Yeah, something, Giuseppe, that you just said about motivations and engagement and retention. There are a lot of those things that I think follow suit with our own market as well. And Jan, you mentioned at the very beginning, data and understanding the user behavior, the student behavior. Something that I've seen that we really like are different types of tools to help students understand, in this case, the market for what we're talking about being students, the consumers. They often don't know what they want. They may not know even what motivates them. They may not know how to get a baseline of where they are today or where they want to go. And there are different tools. We've created one at Springboard to help people understand and assess exactly what their skill levels are today, what's the right course or program for them. There's a company in the western part of the US called EMSI, EMSI, that's created a really, really interesting tool called Skills Match that does something very similar. It's essentially a survey type of tool. It helps people walk through what are their motivations, what is their current baseline of educational attainment, where are they looking to go, and what are they willing to sacrifice to get there, maybe in terms of time, financial resources, et cetera. So all those things play in the background, and you start to figure out exactly what their motivations are, and you can find out, well, how can they be successful? What is it that would help them to be retained in a course? What is it that's going to keep them engaged throughout the life of what they're doing? And we do that at Springboard through a mix of both technology to understand where students are, where they're struggling in the platform, and then also with our mentors and student success coaches to find out where they hit a speed bump. Learning is about crashing and burning sometimes. It's not all sunshine and roses. You have to be able to hit something, hit that brick wall, and figure out how to pick yourself back up to motivate your way through the course and be successful. And that is a big part of learning. And I think whether it's face-to-face or online, self-paced, instructor-led, whatever the modality or methodology is, you're going to find that. But all that goes back to understanding the students and their motivations and just consumer behavior in general, and tailoring your approach to be able to maximize those. I laughed earlier when Jan said conversion rates. Every step along the way, whether it's enrollment funnel or success in a course, there is some element of a conversion rate to keep them moving and progressing forward. And I think those are the things that we're always thinking about.
Probably, yeah, that's a great point again. So that brings us to, I think, to the user journey part here. We have seen that within the e-learning courses, there are three specific parts. That's orientation and enrollment. I think we spoke a lot about this particular phase during this particular recent question discussion. The next one is teaching and learning experience. And the third one is the alumni experience and the lifelong learning. I think along with these steps, what would you say, which phase of the journey carries more weight or offers more opportunities for optimization and experiments out of the three? We can start with Brian this time. Yeah.
I think each one of those has a ton of opportunity. For me, it's probably what I would call the input part of the journey, if we're talking about the experience. And I'll probably steal a little bit of what I just teased out in my last what I was just talking about. Understanding that audience profile, helping them understand themselves about what they can do, what they can leverage to be successful, and then drawing a clear picture of how to get there. I always try to give the example of what is the pathway, where's the finish line, what's the map to get there, and helping them leverage whatever they can to figure that out. So that's just to get them in the door. That's just to help them identify where it is that they want to go. And program selection then becomes the next phase of that, choosing exactly what they're going to pick as a consumer, what's right for them. And that's where I think there's probably a lot more optimization. But that is the biggest part of it, is just the audience segmentation and understanding and helping them understand where they're headed.
Great. Personally, I'd say, for me, if I have to pick any one out of the three, I'd probably pick teaching and learning experience. My thoughts on those are that, once you're logged in, once I've paid my money, if I have to be not only a lifelong customer, but I would be your vehicle to tell this to the other 10 people. I could play a very big, an important role in word of mouth, because you understand, if I'm signing up for a course for 10 months and that's going to change my life, I'm going to go to everybody, and I will be your case study, your living and breathing case study to talk about the success that I had through Springboard or through ISA. So, my personal take on this is that, we should be focusing a lot more on the teaching and the learning experience. To rest, first one is a promise, and the third one is the result of that experience. But I'll come to Giuseppe for that. Yeah. Out of the three, Giuseppe, what do you think? Which one is the most crucial one?
I mean, I think Brian said it. I mean, they're all three ripe with opportunities. Anytime you have a need, right? The biggest impact of digitalization, if we really reduce it to its essence, is this idea of meeting needs in new ways, right? I mean, that's what it's about, or again, meeting unmet needs. So, there's needs in orientation, there are needs in teaching, there are needs in lifelong. Let me take lifelong just because it's something that I'm kind of interested in lately. I think we're moving, or maybe, I would say maybe we're moving from a kind of product view of education to more a service one, and I'm not sure who's going to take the responsibility for providing that service. Whether it's the individuals themselves that have the onus, whether it's the organizations that they work for, or whether it's institutions like schools or such, right? But fundamentally, what I mean is that as an individual, you have increasingly a need for learning that goes beyond specific moments in your life, which used to be, the degree, the master's, the corporate education, et cetera. These are specific transformational moments, right, of step change, if you will, after which you're sort of on a plateau and you kind of, expend your learning. We're moving away from that towards a kind of ongoing, continuous, right, lifelong, we want to call it today, development, in which I learn something every day, every week, every month, every year. Yes, there's still those transformational moments, programs, formal, but there's also what I read today versus the conversation with my coach this week versus my meeting with my group of peers this month, and so on and so forth. And so I need a way to set goals over specific periods of times and kind of capture these learning moments and integrate them into a journey that's going to get me to that goal, and continuously on an ongoing basis. Now, this is what I mean, if there's a huge opportunity for digital to allow this capturing of these learning moments, this integration of these learning moments, the generation of analytics that personalize the journey, and so on and so forth, to provide a service, something like healthcare is a service, right? Where, you know, I've subscribed to something that allows me to both, you know, have an annual checkup as well as, you know, do the, you know, operation that I need, as well as get advice on certain matters and so on and so forth. So I think lifelong is an opportunity, right? Whether the market is ready to buy that membership, I don't know. I think one day they might. I'm not so sure who's providing that. I think no one is at the moment. Companies are starting to think maybe in those terms when they think of lifelong employee experience, but I think we're still a ways off from it.
Sure. Thanks a lot for those, Giuseppe. And yeah, Brian, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to add in, I think lifelong learning, at least from a US-centric point of view in higher education, it's been a term used, it's been a buzzword for a long time. And historically, what the traditional academic institutions have done, right or wrong, they've taken what they do really well from a content and a degree and a delivery perspective, and they slice off pieces of that. And whether it's the example of someone that's mid-career and they'd love to go back to their alma mater or a school that they have an affinity to or that they're familiar with and say, hey, I'd love to get expertise here. And so what schools have historically done is slice off a certificate of this or content from that, and it's repackaged, really an unpackaged version in a repackaged way of what they've done for a long time. And it may not meet the need in some cases for today's millennial who would have, for example, 11 to 13 different jobs throughout their career. So every 3 to 5 years, there's going to be a need for very significant, not just professional education, but career change support and that sort of adaptation model that goes with that. And that may not always align with what lifelong learning has been defined as in traditional higher education. So I think all of that is where the real opportunity is. How do we take industry practitioners and let them drive this? How do we create better networks? How do we let universities, in this case, create better engagement with their alumni and then create sort of a flywheel effect to make sure that they can participate in these programs, they can be consumers or mentors, and you're driving a lot more of a sticky experience for all those people involved. So I think that's a model that I think is very exciting and we're starting to hear a lot about.
Sure. Thanks a lot for that input, Brian. Jan?
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you said. It's probably we're going to see most changes happening there and in the middle phase in the teaching learning experience as such. And as a matter of fact, I'm now listening to what you just said. I'm not sure if these are two phases or in the future it's just one, because the teaching learning never ends, actually. So we still tend to think about a course and a degree, and that's it. And then we all relax, we go to work, and at some point we get back to learn more stuff. Eventually, it's more what Giuseppe said. It's going to be an ongoing membership. Eventually we have to migrate into some kind of subscription model, because, I mean, seriously, the courses that you take now, how long does it take to be outdated stuff? There's new things going on. That's the acceleration is so incredible that actually in continuous update, not to use the lifelong learning thing, but this efficient updating of knowledge. This is probably something that we're going to see very soon. However, I see two facts when we speak with companies in the e-learning field. Number one is it is so tempting to focus on the first phase, because that's where the business is. So that you've got sales people, you've got commercial people, you want to see enrollments and signups, and you want to sell your product in a certain way. So that is why very often all the UX optimization effort is pretty much intuitively targeted to the first phase, even though it is not the most important one. But of course, you want to make people sign up with you in a certain way. The second thing that we see is in the middle phase with teaching and learning, if we're not talking about an e-learning company like yours, Brian, but at universities, all universities around the globe, there are a lot of holy cows there. So, and I think I haven't worked with, to be honest, I haven't worked with Moodle or with Google Classroom myself, but from what I hear is there is a whole bunch of flaws and things that actually they need to improve. That my kids both are 20-something years old. They said main reason why I don't want to study online is actually because I can't speak to my friends. I don't have the social effect of learning. So the most enjoyable thing is group working, so to say, and work together on a subject, go in a seminar, and then so this is all not happening to wide extent, or only rarely happening. So I think that the tools, education technology, that focuses on the teaching learning experience, there's a whole bunch of things that needs to be optimized, needs to be measured. And as you said, these micro conversions, they need to be measured. And I don't know, we're talking, Deepak, you are running a company that is in A/B testing, that is in testing and optimization. Does that actually happen in Moodle or in Google Classroom? Are they actually monitoring this and doing A/B tests on different materials or on different things that they could do in a course or in a training program? I love to see that. I think my feeling tells me there's a lot of stuff happening in the first phase where it's more commercially focused, but there's not enough happening in the teaching learning experience to make actually the education in this very phase more enjoyable and more effective.
Absolutely agree. And in fact, since I've been in the A/B testing industry for almost 5 years, the best quotation I've ever liked is A/B test your life. So I think we should be A/B testing everything, not just online courses or anything, but we should be open to the idea of A/B testing for everything. I think this brings me to a question, Jan, which is particularly suited for you. So what would you suggest how to devise an optimization strategy and define priorities for the e-learning businesses? And you could also give us some examples as to what kind of experiments or tests one should run.
Well, that depends very much. I don't know if we have the slide available that we looked at yesterday. If we could see it, that would be a big help. Yeah. But oh, here it is. Yeah. Actually, I think first thing that to start with, and it's a must do, understand the journey. So really look into the journey of if you're dealing with optimizing the entire customer journey at your school or at your university, understand the entire journey before the course, during the course, and after the course. So before you don't understand the pain points at every touch point and in every moment and micro step, you can hardly start optimizing there. And I think once that you do it, whenever we do this, it's so interesting. Implicitly, then suddenly we see the possibilities and the priorities for an optimization strategy, and it's always very different depending on the one or the other thing. The problem really is in the middle and during the course. I mentioned it. You depend on third-party. Well, a lot of universities and other schools that depend on third-party learning technology and learning experience management platforms, which they can hardly tackle or optimize. And so their opportunities is limited, whereas changing, improving things in their alumni site or on their website where enrollment is happening, they have access to that. They can manage it. But very often the platform which is used to deliver the content, they are facing, they're depending on third-party technology. But nevertheless, I think it's the most important part. And I think talking to these technology providers always helps. And I'm almost sure, and we've seen that they are open to optimize things and customize things in this area. But again, main message here is start understanding this journey, understand the pain points, talk to your students, talk to your teachers, because we have to look into this from both angles, and then find out what needs to come first. From what we've done, I've been participating in 3 projects so far, and it was always the same, that it was always focused on the center piece of education, so teaching, learning, and very much on interaction, interactivity, and searching for ways to create a more effective delivery of skills and knowledge.
What would you say? I have a quick question for you. In my experience looking at various university websites and e-learning websites, I find a lot of them are content heavy. There's a lot of content a person needs to read before they can decide. So what would you suggest? Having too much content, average content, because too much content could make the visitor or the learner lost. And how would you say that
I don't
it is
know.
a good idea
I don't
testing?
know. I mean, it's not about how much. It's more or less how it is served, how it is structured, how it is illustrated, and so on. So of course, the university or many schools, they don't have the commercial attitude, and they don't have a marketing department that is huge like in many other industries. But so there's the content isn't that there's a lot of really valuable content that reformatted and served in a better, more effective way with more with a better searchability and with a better navigation. That's one thing. And the other thing is there is a lot of content that is trying to serve everybody. So you see that when I visit a website of a university and I start browsing different sites, the site could quickly learn from me, from my behavior, what they are actually interested in. So I'm not into medicine, I'm not into law, I'm looking into creative things. So all the other stuff that keeps being there and distracting me is completely irrelevant for me. So
basically saying
the intelligence, I think there's a lot of stuff. The content is okay, but you need to serve it intelligently and proactively and in a more personalized way. And the tools are, I mean, I don't have to tell you, I used to do this perfectly with VWO and some other tools, of course. But it's possible. It's just not people who are managing the digital channels of universities. At business schools, it might be slightly different. They're not really used to that. I mean, they're happy if the site is up and running. So
great. I get your point. Brian, very quickly, your thoughts and what do you think? What kind of changes, what kind of optimization programs does Springboard have?
Yeah, I think in terms of optimization, I would agree with a lot of what Jan said as well. The commercial attitude is probably the first part of this, meaning is it a success just to have something out there? Is it a success to be data heavy? Or is it a success to make sure that someone within 15 seconds can figure out exactly what they're doing and where they're going if they're investigating your site? And again, that's sort of the method of what we're talking about here in the webinar. But then the flip side of that, the image that you had on the screen a little bit ago, once a student is inside the learning environment, in this case, something that we have developed at Springboard is there isn't a lot of orientation. There isn't a instruction booklet required. You know where you're going, you know what you've accomplished, you know what you've achieved, and you know where you need to start getting down to work once you're in the environment. So there's a level of design focused on the intuitive nature of the environment, the educational pathway as well, so that you know exactly what it takes to be successful and you know where you stand. And I think a lot of that, once you're inside the learning environment, is the most important part, because if you're lost, then you immediately drop out, stop out, and retention and engagement completely go out the window. So there are different phases of that, but I think of it more from the learner behavior standpoint of the students that we serve.
Can you talk to me about an example that, an anecdotal example of something that you changed and it worked for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't steal the thunder of the talented learning designers that we have on staff, of course, from my perspective on the commercial end. But I would say that there are very small improvements that we make all the time, whether it's something that takes a long time to load inside the environment, something that I learned about last week, where there was something that the student was trying to get through that was just simply taking a long time, and them knowing that they are 60% of the way through the course or 70% of the way through a content item, knowing what they have to do to complete the item. That's all it takes to get them a little more motivated to keep working and keep going inside the learning environment. So those are the sort of things that I think are incremental changes that keep someone engaged from a student's perspective, keep them going and motivated, and they proceed through to the course to find success.
Thanks a lot there, Brian. Giuseppe, I have a similar question, but in a different, because when I looked up your LinkedIn profile, I saw that you have been in this industry for a decade. So let me ask you this: how have you seen the people behavior changing online? How was it back in 2010 versus 2020?
Well, I mean, I think in all walks of life, right? This is not unique to education. the availability of technology has fundamentally transformed, our opportunities to use it, again, to address needs. And perhaps the most important element of that technology being mobile, also the most recent, right? But clearly we have at our fingertips now things such as web conferencing tools enabled by networks that only a decade ago were of quality that was objectively inferior to the face-to-face equivalent. And this is that's the name of the game, right? And I want to obviously acknowledge that not everybody has access to such devices and such a connectivity, which is something that ironically this crisis is pointing out, how online can open up a social divide that is actually worrying. But setting that aside for a minute, clearly our ability to do what we're doing today is nothing to do with what it was a decade ago and non-existent 2 decades ago. So, the first online universities over here in Spain, the WOC, or the Open University in the UK and in the US, I'm sure Brian will have some examples, but their product was inferior because it was. I mean, it was first and foremost because of the quality, actually, of the access. That's no longer the case. So we've removed this kind of better than or worse than, and now it's really a sort of mindset which is digital first, and then tell me why we should do face-to-face, right? And I think that is a fundamental shift in all walks of life. Even if in a business meeting or travel, you're going to ask yourself the question: can I do it online, or do I actually have to get on a plane? And this is a fundamental, radical, massive change. And you're going to ask yourself that question because you recognize that it's good enough, right? It's good enough for certain objectives, for certain needs. Clearly, blended will always be preferred to either online, but to fully online. Of course, if you have the ability to engage in a blended education or a blended learning experience. But what's more important than that is blended is actually better than face-to-face. And so that I think is fundamentally different than any previous decade, any year, any experience. I mean, it's like a before and after.
Yeah, so that brings me to the final question of the webinar. What do you see as the future of e-learning and online higher education as the future?
Myself, I mean, I think it's the future. If I knew the future, I'd I probably wouldn't be doing this webinar. But it's I mean, it's cliche, right? It's going to grow and it's going to multiply and it's going to. I think we need to be, first of all, rigorous practitioners or scholarly practitioners, right? I think what we need to avoid is this sort of jumping on the bandwagon of what's cool or what sells. And I know that that's difficult in a Wild West opportunity space, but actually, to think more about what's effective and what's the best way to solve the needs of learning, right? So that's one. So not because it sells or because it looks good, is it actually effective? Number one. And so if we can all be a little bit more rigorous in what we design and what we promote, I think that will be beneficial. For the second thing, which is the ability to fundamentally put in place the theories of learning that we know work, and we have been now confirmed through brain science that work, but that perhaps we couldn't put in place in the past. in a face-to-face world, right? I'll give you an example. I mean, we know that whatever we learn is lost in terms of knowledge, just simple knowledge, right? There's a forgetting curve, right? Over a very brief period of time from the moment we pick up that knowledge, right? You know, we have the ability to solve that through technology, through reminders that are, sort of at scale, spread to learning populate, to the individual via mobile and so on and so forth, right? We actually have the ability to solve a lot of the needs, and that learning requires, to essentially practice what, the let's say our idols in learning theory have told us works. Personalization is another one, right? We can do personalization at scale through adaptive learning, and tomorrow even more. It used to be you have to put everybody with a tutor in a kind of, the one-room schoolhouse kind of thing. Yeah, that doesn't scale. That's nice theory, but doesn't scale. So, that's why we have schools and universities and, these cookie cutter thing, right? Now we can do personalization at scale. So I think, we have to be rigorous in what we promote, and number two, really try to address the needs of learning through technology.
Great. Brian, what would you say on the future of e-learning?
We at Springboard have a mantra that follows a little bit of what Giuseppe was saying, which is one size fits one. We have to use the tools that we have at our disposal, on whether it's something that allows the content and the environment to adapt to the students' needs so that they can be successful. And I think that is something that requires less intervention. It allows them to learn quickly. It allows them to also leverage other parts of the environment more efficiently. So if the comment earlier about blended having a superior opportunity for students, I think modality agnostic, it really is something that depends on access. So the future of learning, or e-learning in this case, from my perspective, there's a lot of blurred lines. Schools are going to be creating new pathways and serving new audiences with some of the things that we've been talking about. You're going to start to see a lot more, and this is more from a US focused, higher ed focused perspective. You're going to see a lot more interest in integrating these things in terms of, how do I validate someone's experience or credential, and maybe give them an opportunity to jump into a degree program or something else at a university that they didn't have access to or an opportunity to participate in before. So there's going to be these new types of accessibility pathways, articulation agreements, future of skills types of opportunities that students of all ages, regardless of their academic attainment and educational background, are going to have access to.
Sure. Jan, your point of view on the commercial aspect of the future of e-learning?
Well, the chances are great. I mean, we have it. We always said it's going to be a breakthrough for education. As such, it's going to change the world. We've seen the massive open online courses. The expectations were huge. It didn't live up to its expectations, these initiatives, to a wide extent. I think it depends pretty much on what what we make out of the tools that are existing. But the tools as such are not enough. We need to use them creatively. We have to create a great user experience with them, which means that as long as just we take the technology and then we deliver our online education in a certain way, I think we will not use the full potential and the opportunity that we are actually facing. The more we think about making education fun, making it a really enjoyable exercise, making it social, making it really, let's say, opening connections with people during the course, during the class. So all this and is probably a huge factor of success, together with what we've mentioned a couple of times, personalization at scale. I think that's also so very true. I don't know if that's going to happen in e-learning platforms. I could imagine, but if I think about all the public universities and higher education institutes, I mean, the programs are written in stone since 200 years. And when you talk to edutech representatives, they are almost losing their hope, so to say, to achieve a breakthrough. this could now change because this year, and I think also to wide extent next year, traditional schools will have to face digitalization, and they have to make it better because the students complain. They have survived summer 2020. They will survive the winter, but when it comes to springtime, then the students are walking away if you are not acting and if you are not presenting something, and then you have that's the only way that you can stay in business somehow. So the future depends on that creativity, kind of gamification, creating a great experience, and making use of good technology.
Thanks a lot there, Jan. I think, my only comments on the future of e-learning is, as you mentioned correctly, taking a leaf out of the last point that you made, that yes, this is going to be the new normal. People would want to sharpen their skills, want to learn new strategies. There would be students who want to, access the courses online from anywhere while they're, somebody who's a vlogger and somebody who's a travel enthusiast does not have the time to go to the college and get a degree. He might be interested to opt in for this. And, if the universities would be open to it, they would be able to take in a lot more learners. A lot more learners would mean a lot more job opportunities for professors. And by creating online community of teachers, I think we are just increasing the job opportunities for everybody. I think anybody who get trained from Springboard can be employed back at Springboard as a professor, or as a teacher, or as a mentor. So again, it's a life cycle of the things that we can do. Similarly, and I think people coming from traditional universities, they can pick a leaf out of companies like Springboard, enhance their skill set, and be better at classroom teaching. So there is always a synergy between the two, which I think. And I think we can now open the floor for questions. Guys, please let us know if you have any questions. You can raise your hands, or you can put up the questions in the chat or the question window, and we'd like to take it up.
Sure. And
Now
at
we
this
are
point, I would
facing.
also.
Yeah,
Please go ahead, Jan.
just to add what Deepak said. Now, in this very second, we are facing the same challenge that every teacher is facing in his classes. Now, any questions? And now we are looking at the wide blank question box, hoping that some of our attendees is now encouraged enough and feels motivated enough to participate and join us in this conversation. It's actually a good example. No, I mean, how can we achieve that people really do this and participate in a conversation or in a course?
Yes, absolutely. So any attendee who actually wants to be a part of this panel right now, if they have any thoughts to contribute on the topic being discussed or any point that stood out to you, please send us your request using the questions panel, and we'll allow you to switch on your cameras and come on stage. I actually had a few points that I wanted to highlight from the discussion, and if I were to squeeze, some insights from the discussion itself, I would say the biggest challenge that lies ahead for any e-learning business, and I think for any business for that sake, is conquering the motivation to keep going forward. And I'm talking from the perspective of the learner, right? I've been in those situations. I've contemplated in terms of, hey, whether I should go ahead and take up a certain degree or not. Then I would contemplate, hey, should I get myself enrolled in a university, or should I take up an online course? So my consideration has always been regarding the time investment. Am I really ready to invest my 2 years in that particular degree? Then I look at any online solutions, and I see that there are few online services that offer the same education within a period of, let's say, 8 months, 9 months. So again, my question is, will I be able to contribute that much time alongside sorry for the background noise, but would I be able to contribute my part in terms of learning after my office hours? So that has been the real friction point for me. So do you guys have any thoughts on that? Have you encountered the same problem anywhere before, and how do you suggest one should tackle those problems?
I think My take on that is the online education has attempted to add this elasticity, if you will, of consumption. Do I have the ability to spend 2 hours a week, 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week? Can I continue on that pace? Can I still be successful? Can I still have a finish line in mind? And then what's the commitment level? Going back to what you were talking about in terms of the motivations, is it something to where I'm being forced off by knife point because my career, my industry is effectively being ended, and I have to go through some sort of change or career move or educational milestone to do this? Or is it a nice to have? Is it something else that really is just a pet project, something that motivates me intrinsically, whatever it could be? So I think those are the things that people think of that tie back to from either the pedagogy or technology side, tries to create some sort of adaptive solution to adapt to whatever those kinds of needs are.
Right. Jan or Giuseppe, do you have any guidance for me on that point?
Well, I mean, your question already indicates that that the user experience in the part where you're looking up for informations and where you should be motivated to take a course and where you should be convinced to enroll, someone didn't do his job properly. So the experience is obviously it's possible to improve it. The questions that you have in mind aren't sufficiently addressed. So I think that's something. And while you are when you're doing your first steps, I think it's an ongoing challenge to keep listening to your audience and to your students, and to find out whether it's all in line or whether you have to make adjustments or eventually recommend another course. I think it's again, it is something to find these pain points that you are just pointing out, not having it too clear whether you want to commit for 2 years. And the other thing is what Giuseppe said earlier. Eventually, it's going to be more modular, and it's going to be an ongoing thing rather than this static decision of taking a 2 years course now, hoping that the degree at the end will open a door for a career. Probably career opportunities will look different, and the way we get there also will be very different.
Right, that does make sense, because since I've been I have to invest my time towards doing the office work as well. So my thought process is to quickly learn something up, right? So if you there are a variety of short-term courses nowadays, and by short-term I mean like 30 minutes courses, 1 hour courses, right? On LinkedIn Learning, there are courses on by HubSpot, right? So these are very, very small courses, which for me do not seem like a real big time investment. And at the same time, when my motivation to actually invest 1 hour on that course is that whatever I learn in this 1 hour time period, this will definitely upgrade my skills, and I will actually be able to implement this tomorrow itself, right? So the speed of learning and implementing it in your current work and how it matches to my aspirations has been a real motivator for me in terms of picking up short courses than picking up a longer period course.
I would have a question to Giuseppe there, which relates to that to a certain point, if I may. Giuseppe, when this is what a general trend that what people pointed out, that we tend to go for micro steps rather than taking full courses, and we are living in a society where consumers don't have the patience for taking a 2-year or 3-year education. So is that going to change tremendously? So will we see shorter periods or smaller pieces of educations coming up?
Again, I don't know, and but I'd like to hope that that's not the case, in the sense of we don't substitute one thing for the other, right? I don't see the world as binary or either or. I'd like to hope that in our lives as humans, there's time such as the time university provides for the development of sort of foundational competencies and for the exploration of certain fields, and then there's time at other moments in our lives for much more practical sort of acquisition of skills related to a particular job or pursuit of a particular something. So, if we have a juxtaposition of one versus the other, like we tend to do when we, get into these conversations, I think we're really, I don't know. I think we're diminishing kind of the richness of, hopefully, of our lives and our as learners. I get it that it's easy and it sells and it's nice headlines today, this story that, hey, we're going to have micro credentials and stack these and so on and so forth, or we're just going to go to learn 10-minute segments on our mobile. But I'm not so sure that you, I, or Brian would sign up for that, given where we are today in our life, thinking back when we were 17 years old. I wouldn't. I think my university and certain other educational experiences have actually provided me the opportunity to build some, foundational, thinking that such experiences would not. Yet I rely on these experiences now for doing other things. So I think it's much more rich, and talking about one versus the other is a little bit simplistic, and hopefully it doesn't go that way.
Agree.
Great point there, Vivek. So yes, I think, Deepak, we can invest maybe another 3-4 minutes. Again, I request people to send in their questions. I have one question from Skanda. Deepak, would you like to take it up?
Sure. So we have a question from Skanda. Hi team, great session, interesting perspectives. My question is to Brian, is about what's the relevance of traditional universities in near future with on-demand and more relevant courses, mini degrees. Do you think there will be demand for traditional universities? India has about 1,000 universities, approximately, of which probably 85% is not even relevant. So I think the question is the relevance of traditional universities versus the courses or the mini degrees available online.
Yeah, I think it goes to a little bit of what Giuseppe was saying just now as well. I think it's an and, not an or, and it also depends on just economic factors and the financial climate as well. Not all schools, in the way that they've lived in the past, will survive moving forward. Some will adapt, some will change, some will merge, whatever it may be. But in a lot of cases, what we do as Springboard to help facilitate experiential learning, career readiness, those sorts of things in very advanced fields, isn't meant to be, in every case, a replacement for higher education in its traditional form from a degree perspective. So I think the way I would respond to that is there will be a lot of winners and losers. There will obviously be schools that have enrollment struggles because they may not be able to fulfill a value promise or the right kind of outcomes, but there are a lot of schools that do. And there are a lot of schools that will embrace different kinds of learning methodologies. And the good news is there's a ton of people through a continuum of their life and their career of what they are asking for, what they're ready for, and what they need to serve each one of those kinds of opportunities on the supply side. So it's definitely not a end of higher education for sure. It's one of those things where the model is going to continue to evolve for sure.
All right, Skanda, not a problem. So if we have like a follow-up to that. Right. Vipul, shall we wait for like a couple more minutes or a minute or so if you have any final questions before we wrap it up?
So yeah, one last request to everyone once again. If you have any questions, you can put them in right now, or I think we're good to close the webinar. Perfect. So I don't see any questions coming up, right? But guys, if you have any questions that do turn up after this webinar is closed, feel free to reach out all our panelists on today. You can actually take a screenshot of this particular slide, and you can individually reach out to all of them and ask your questions or just connect with them to say hi. I think that would be a great thing. Perfect. So Deepak, I think it's okay to close the webinar now. Thank you so much, Brian, Giuseppe, and Jan, for your time and for your inputs. I really loved each and every bit of it.
A pleasure.
I'm sure the audience would have loved it too. And Deepak, thanks again for being such a good moderator for the discussion.
Thanks a lot, Vipul.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe, everyone, and have a great day. Bye.